Hello, welcome to my channel, and in fact, welcome to his channel.
Hey!
It's a double Boyter classic.
Yes, and what's more exciting than that?
Yeah. So basically what I wanted to do is, I wanted to make a little film, a little piece about the intersection between writing and games design. Because recently Ken and I have both entered the world, he's been in it longer than me, of game design. But we're both writers as well. And actually, we were sort of talking earlier about how there's people who are writers would benefit from also designing games.
Yeah.
Or at least just trying your hand at trying to come up with a game idea.
There seems to be a connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's obviously the main connections is it's both creative. So obviously if you're coming up with games ideas, you're thinking about the mechanics, but you are also thinking about the theme. And they aren't necessarily totally separate from each other, are they?
No, I mean you've got all games have a kind of background. Sorry, I'm very formal here.
You're very formal, yeah. Let's mess things
His
up.
style is a lot more laid back than mine. All right, I'm going to actually have this delicious non-alcoholic beer.
That will get you drunk.
Right, I'll have to drink 14 of these.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so basically...
Start again. No.
Well, the thing is, though, what led you to want to do this video? Because you obviously must have thought, hang on, there's a good comparison. Yeah. Is this helping my writing? Would this help someone's writing? What led you to...
Well, I sort of think it is. And also, it's in a way when you're frustrated with your writing, because it's so... because rewriting particularly is painful. And you don't get much of a. It's hard to get an audience for a piece of writing.
That's true. Yeah.
You can try and persuade people to read it. You can put it out on the internet as I do. You can send it to magazines.
You've not paid me yet to read it. That's all. You could always do that.
That could be a thing. But really, what you want to do is just get people to enjoy your work and feel no obligation to do so other than it's fun. And games is where that happens, because if a game is working, it's just a fun thing to take part in. Nobody's really agonising too much about, I'm doing this as an onerous favour for someone else.
Yeah. Although saying that...
maybe. Depends on how early stages the game is.
Yes. And that is a very good point. I don't know if we want to dive too deeply into this, but when I was doing the Bottled Imp YouTube channel with Julian, we were reviewing board games, primarily fantasy board games. And I started off just reviewing and kind of recommending games that I already had in my collection, I already enjoyed. I think that's how a lot of reviewers start. Then, as our popularity grew, we actually had publishers send us games, which was very nice. And then you'd play them. And I would always be fair. I would always be honest. I wouldn't, just because I've got a freebie, I'm going to give it a good review. That wasn't my thing. And equally... I had to be just as brutal. I did have Kickstarter people, games designers, who hadn't yet started their Kickstarter but were still developing the game. So they were like independent, games designers wanting to publish their game, and Kickstarter is a good way to do it. And there's other crowdfunding ones as well. The problem with that was that they sent me copies of really undercooked games. Yeah. So I remember
it's not really ready for a playtest.
It wasn't ready. Certainly not for an external somebody who's not involved in the process playtest.
So it's like sending someone your first draft of a short story without even bothering to check it for typos.
Just about to say that. Yeah. There is a certain thing where you have to get it to a certain level, so both board games, card games and writing, before you then unleash it on someone else, because the last thing you want is for them to be frustrated at the mistakes, if you like, at the things that you think, come on, that's shouldn't be there, because you're not going to enjoy it, you're going to get frustrated with it. And really, are the people that are playtesting it or reading the first draft, unless they've experienced playtesters and editors or whatever, they may just think, they might not see the difference between that's just an undercooked bit of work rather than a bad bit of work. Yeah. So if they ever saw your name and a bit of work again, they probably wouldn't want to read a beta thing or a playtest it. And also, if they saw it in the shops, they probably wouldn't buy it, because I know it's only one customer, but it's sort of like Why should they trust you again? So it is really important in writing and board game design to get it to a certain level, isn't it?
So there's that. I mean, it's a good way of testing out some ideas and getting immediate feedback once it's ready. But what I really wanted to talk about in terms of the link between narrative in a short story or novel and narrative in a game, for me there's like two layers.
Okay.
There's the sort of setting of the game, like the game that we've been working on called The Wandering Wood. Without saying too much about it, it's basically a wood.
It's set in a wood. Who'd
It
have
kind
thought?
of changes.
It wanders
in an interesting way.
Yeah.
And there's a story around that, and there's a story about villages and a plague, and there's the backstory of the game.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a nice and essential sort of colouring aspect of the game. But the important stuff in the game is the mechanics of the game, which is equivalent to your plot. Really, the way you've constructed your plot. In other words, what you've done is you've built things into it which are going to mess things up, or where characters can advance their cause and stymie other people, and that is the conflict in a game. The conflict in a game is either the conflict between what you want to achieve and the problems you have trying to achieve it, or inter-player conflict,
sabotage, and other players monkeying around.
And that is it's really interesting to see how that happens in a game, and how just by changing a few mechanisms and a few things that don't seem to be that big a deal, and all of a sudden it suddenly comes alive.
It ramps up.
And it's sort of like it gets you thinking about storytelling, and maybe all I need to do is what if I just made the character's shoes not fit very well?
Yeah.
So that he's walking around all day with a
bad temper.
It's like
and then he takes his bad temper out on other characters.
It's like Seinfeld does that. Used to do it all the time.
Right.
So like very trivial, meaningless things that escalate into like a big emotional ramification. But
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, does that. Yeah, to the nth degree.
I would also say that's a good point about the theme and the story in games. I would also say the mechanism is not only equals to a plot, if you like, in stories, but it also equals to the more hidden aspects of writing, i.e. structure, i.e. even just grammar. You've still got to get the grammar correct.
Yeah, there's kind of a 3-act structure, really, even of a board game. In the
potentially the middle, beginning, end. Yeah, you can get different structures, obviously, but what I mean is, if in a novel, if you've got the basics, the hidden basics wrong, it's like drawing as well. If you get things out of proportion, no matter how well you shade it in, it will just seem off. It will just go, well, that doesn't quite look right. And it's the same with structure. It's the same with grammar. If you mess up your grammar, and so it's the same with mechanics. If the mechanics don't gel and they don't work perfectly, then it's going to be off, and then the players are going to get frustrated. Equally, if the characters do things out of character, that annoys people so much.
If you've created a world of your board game, let's say you create a zombie board game, which you probably shouldn't do because there's probably enough of them now.
There's a gazillion.
But if you create a zombie board game and then somebody thinks, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we put vampires in? Like, well, that's a different game. That's a different narrative.
Unless you called it Vampires versus Zombies.
Yeah.
No, but I know what you mean.
You've sort of broken the rules, inbuilt rules of that world. You've.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would say to that is that if you've got zombies, you've got two things or a couple of things to consider. One is, what is a zombie? So there are different versions of zombies now, isn't there? So what version have you got? And you then have to clarify that, because if you sort of say, if you don't clarify it, and then out of nowhere a zombie moves really quickly, and whereas they've always been moving slowly, then you go, oh, hang on, whoa, you didn't foreshadow that, I didn't know that.
Audience expectation.
Yeah, so you can't just throw things in, and that's the same with the mechanics. You have to really, it has to be intuitive, I always think, the mechanics.
Yeah, it should be something that once you have played it a little bit, for a few rounds, you've got it sort of generally understood it.
Yeah.
What else do I think that writers can get from doing board games? It's problem solving, really. It's great for plotting. It's great for coming up with getting your brain into that frame of mind where you can sort of come up with interesting conundrums and then have your characters solve them. That's something that I like doing, and I like stories with twists. I like to have a little neat fitting
you like
thing that's
tales
got
of
an
the
ending.
unexpected.
Yeah, I quite like that sort of stuff.
Roll dial.
If I can
Roll dial.
He was like this, the radio version.
You just tune him out and you get a different story. Although I watched, have you seen Tales of the Unexpected recently?
Not recently, no. With the funny music at the beginning. The woman going like this.
I've got Series 1. I bought Series 1 about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was going to then buy them all on DVD, and I still probably will. In one episode is a very young Pierce Brosnan.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And all he plays is a jogger.
Right.
He's just jogging past. The main character goes, "You got the time, mate?" or something like that. And he goes, "Yes, it's 9:45 on my Rolex watch." No, he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And then he jogs off, and you think, "Wow, that's amazing. You've all got to start somewhere."
It's 5 to 7.
Yeah, exactly. But
that's not the line, Piers.
Yeah, come on, Piers. Well, what was I going to say? I can't remember now. I've derailed the situation. Yeah, thanks for that. No, you like those twists. Yeah.
What else? I mean, okay.
Yeah, go on.
When you're playing a game, you want it to start off.
That's a good thing. Yeah, you don't want it to stop. You don't want it to be over before you've played it.
You want it to be a fairly simple process by which the game starts. You know, you lay a tile, you move a character, you engage in some sort of.
You've got to ease into it.
Ease into it.
Okay.
And then it progressively gets more and more complicated as all the people around you who are playing the game, over whom you have very little control, start messing up your strategy, and doing other things that you're not quite sure what's going on. And it should build to some sort of a climax. It should ideally, even in a game, I feel.
Oh yes.
It should come to a point where, okay, I'm gonna either do something spectacular and win this, or I'm losing.
Well, but then you do need catch-up mechanisms, because you don't really want people to feel like they are just losing, because what happens then is people then start king-making. So they'll say, well, I'm losing, but I kind of know that these two are neck and neck. Because I like, Joanna more than Philip, I'm going to...
Poor Philip.
Yeah, he's a loser. He's always a loser. I'm going to help, Joanna. And in a way... a lot of people don't like that because it sort of interferes with the spirit of the game, doesn't it? So I would say you have to sort of balance. A
catch-up mechanism is like the what's it called, the Deus Ex Machina in a not particularly well-written story where the tree just fell over and landed on the bad guy.
Yeah, something happens. But that's a good point though.
It's got to come out of the other person's ingenuity and. It has to be motivated by something. Motivation is a thing in board games, and what we discovered today with something that's not actually a board game. I've got this new thing I'm developing, which I definitely won't say too much about.
It's a tabletop game.
It's a tabletop.
We won't say too much.
It's quite simple, but I didn't think there was any aspect of bluffing or psychology or anything like that involved, and it turns out there is.
There is, absolutely.
I thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't really see that coming.
Well, that adds to the game, because both reading and playing games, what's the fundamental thing you want from it? You ultimately want entertainment.
Yeah.
So if you're not enjoying it, even if it's a horror film and you're scared out of your wits, people enjoy being scared out of their wits, so they're still enjoying it. And it's the same with games. So if it's too dry, people are you might get a certain percentage that like dry statistic games, but if it's too dry, people are just going, that's not fun. Yeah,
even chess, and Go are famously, a lot of it's about the psychology of what's going on between the two players trying to psych each other out and trying to make each other believe they're trying one strategy when in fact they're doing something else.
Yeah, so there's still an element of bluff there, and that's why
Twister might not have so much of it. I'm not sure.
Twister, can you bluff? You can play it in the buff. You can play in the buff. Is that
you can say
naked Twister?
I'm going to put my leg over there, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah, actually,
not going to like it.
Yeah.
So
I've got into a lot of lawsuits that way.
Never bluff and Twister.
Never bluff, because it can all go wrong.
It can go Horror.
But there are different, but equally, like literature, there are different types of games that you want sort of a different feeling to. So, for example, I played, talking of zombie games, Dead of Winter. I don't know if you've played that yet.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen it, yeah.
I've seen all the pieces gone.
Yeah, blows your mind. So that game is about survival. It's players trying to survive against a horde of zombies, and potentially there's one person that can betray everyone else.
Yeah.
So that ramps up the fear, that ramps up the kind of tension. So if you want that sort of feeling from a game, then you're going to do that. Equally, if you want that from a story, you're going to read a horror story or something like that. Yeah. That
must give me another thought. Another parallel is factions. Factions in particularly in fiction, continuing series, they thrive on that. They thrive on these characters are banding together. This person's betraying someone. But maybe if I can pull them to my side, Walking Dead would not be an 11 series.
Yeah,
an 11. If it wasn't for factions.
But that comes back to what you were saying earlier about conflict. And literature always needs conflict. Board games. I was just trying to think of a game that doesn't have conflict. Although you can have co-op games where players are working together, but you're still conflicted against the board, against the actual
against
conditions.
some sort of randomness which is messing with you.
So you still. So again, it's no surprise that a lot of the board games that are bestsellers are war games.
Yeah.
If you think of the classic one, Risk. It's no surprise because it is conflict and it is factions. It is that we're different from you. We want to dominate you, or we want to dominate your territory, or even if it's not dominating, it's just commerce, it's capitalism, like Monopoly. You're still different entrepreneurs.
What I find particularly interesting is these games where it is essentially every person for themselves, but only at the end. This is where the third act comes in.
Yes.
Like the game that we'll be testing in a bit, The Wandering Wood. If you play it, it won't work with two people, but if you play it with 3 or 4, sometimes you'll get a situation where one person's they're so far ahead, it looks like they're going to win.
Yeah.
So you need to the other two people are like, we don't, we want one of us to have a chance of winning.
Yeah.
So it's in our interest to temporarily join forces to try and defeat this one. But in the third act,
but then ultimately, even if you've teamed up, you then and there is a lot of games that do that. The one that I really enjoy that does that tremendously, and that's where theme really comes into it as well, is Game of Thrones. So you've got Game of Thrones, the board game, which is all about territory. It's all about trying to take over, different areas. In the mechanisms, there are certain conditions where you can make alliances. You can make, you can team up and say, actually, the Starks are getting too powerful. Why don't we team up?
Which is absolutely there in the novels as well.
Yeah,
it's
but that's
a perfect match of narrative and board game.
And that's ultimately, I think, where board games, really successful board games, can do that, where the theme and the mechanics are really meshed.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you were to strip away the theme, the game doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because there are some games where you could just reskin.
Yeah.
And just go.
For those who don't know, reskinning means taking an existing game, basically dressing up in new clothing, and everything else is the same.
So, for example, Monopoly is a good example of that, because yes, it is. Monopoly is initially all about buying property, but you've now got Simpsons. You've got it's not just
anything you can think of.
It's Star Wars. You can make another one is Talisman. You might not have heard of that game, but it's very kind of it's a bit geeky, I guess. But it's been around for like 39 years, I believe it is 39 years, and for years it was a fantasy setting. You had elves, dwarfs, all of that, and I really liked that setting, so it appealed to me. Then in the last 3 or 4 years, a new company got the license, and they went, I know, let's just reskin the hell out of this. So you've got Kingdom Hearts version, you've got Batman version, you've got so there was other ones, and I'm like going, okay, doesn't really appeal to me, because I've got all that nostalgic memory built up with the original game, with the original kind of characters and all of that. Even if, though, interesting enough, even if they've gone, oh no, but we've changed this, we've changed that mechanic. To me, it's like, and that has reminded me about, it's the same with reboots in films. it's like, do I really want to see a reboot? Do you know what I mean? So that's interesting.
How many new Batman movies or Spider-Man movies do you need?
Yeah. But equally though, that's on a flip side, because if you think about it, how many times does Shakespeare get redone?
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think it's new generations as well. So whoever grew up with the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man films might feel even now, just like 20 odd years later, that they're a little bit slow or a little bit old-fashioned
a little bit good
compared to the multiverse. Did you see the multiverse one?
I've
Into
not
the
watched.
Spider-Verse.
No,
Honestly,
not watched any
I would
of them.
recommend watch Into the Spider-Verse. It's one of the best.
Yeah. Apparently
One of the best
really
comic
well.
book movies I've ever seen. It's really clever.
Yeah, it did get a lot of. I think the fans really enjoyed that.
Inventive.
Yeah. But that's a good point actually, because I remember as a kid watching the old black and white Superman. Do you remember the black and white Superman?
No, I don't think so.
Not that I grew up with black and white telly, although we kind of did, but we had telly. I grew up in the 70s. Like when I was
you're not talking about the old
black and white
Zap
Superman.
Pow one. That wasn't black.
No, that wasn't black and white. That was the Adam West. That was Batman, but there was a Superman one where, bless him, the guy that plays Superman was a little bit chunky.
Oh, really? Yeah, different bodies.
But it was that Saturday matinee type feel to it, because it was done in the 50s, I think. It was black and white. It was filmed in the 50s, I think. And the Superman had his, it was sort of its time. It had Superman's hair was greased back, like an old man.
Teddy boy.
Yeah.
like an aging, spreading teddy boy.
It kind of was, yeah. But as a kid, I was probably 6, 7. I loved it. I didn't really, because I had no other frame of reference. Then obviously when Superman the film came out, the Christopher Reeve film came out in 78, I think it was 79. I was blown away by that, because they had updated, they'd modernized, but they'd done a good job. That's the difference. So reboots do work, and it sounds obvious, but you've got to do a good job. It's the same with, sometimes you do get old board games that come back that are maybe taken on by a different publisher, and then they tweak it a little bit. So again, as long as they don't mess with it too much, if it's successful already, why?
It's interesting because you have to mess. You can mess with some of them. You can change some of the mechanics, but only if you keep the heart of the game. I think. Yeah. The kind of.
Because otherwise, you think.
What's the USP? As we, unfortunately, have to say about in marketing. What's the unique selling point of this game? What makes it different from anything else?
I think if you're going to reboot something, you've got to keep it the same, because it's already got a fan base. You don't want to annoy them because they're going to not want to play it or watch it or whatever. Equally though, you kind of want to make it new, because even though the old fans want to see what they like, they still want to have something new to the table, as they say.
One perhaps final or semi-final, we'll see. Thought I had about similarity between board games and narrative stories is that, an advantage that board game development has over it is the fact that you can continually go to a group of people, test the thing, make tweaks, fix it, make it better, go to, play testing, as it's called in game design. The iterative process doesn't really exist in fiction. You don't really write a short story. Well, you might do a little bit, but it's not common practice to endlessly write a draft, show it to someone, write a draft, show it to someone, write a draft, show it to someone.
Unless they're on board with that's what they want to do.
Unless they've already started paying you for that sort of level of work.
Yeah.
Perhaps someone's optioned your script and you've got to do multiple iterations. But even then, seeing it in front, the equivalent would be, I write a story, I write.
What are you trying to say, Gavin?
I write a film script or something, and then it somehow magically becomes a film, and the audience is watching it, and they go, "No, we don't like that so much. If that character did this, and that character, was a bit more developed, I like him. All right, let's rewrite it again. Bang! It turns into another film." Turns into another version of the film, but it's way too expensive to do that.
But
we don't tend to do that.
Yeah, but Hollywood kind of does, don't they? Because they do a test screening of a really rough cut, and then they will change.
It's
they
a sort of
tweak
equivalent,
it,
but it's not.
But that's
it's not
a very
the fully
expensive way to
iterative
do.
from the start process that game design is. Game design
It's easier
a game
to
doesn't
develop
exist
it
in your
that
head,
way.
and it doesn't exist even in a prototype until you've shown it to someone, until
Yeah.
you've played it with someone.
And also, I do think gamers, if you go to your local board game group, if there is one, I've always found that they are quite generous with their time. So as long as you explain, look, this is like a playtest version, I've got it to a good level, so you should enjoy it, but I really need your feedback. They're very up for that, and maybe a couple of times as well. So you don't want to take the mickey too much by, and this is the 50th time you've played tested. But whereas, you're right, it's very rare, unless you've got a very good writers group, where you go, I've just written a 5,000 word story, which might take me a good couple of hours to read. Can you write extensive notes on it? A lot of people find that boring or hard work or not enjoyable. Whereas the weird thing about playtesting a board game is, what I found, and we were doing it today, because they're gamers, they quite are good at solving problems that you might not have thought of as well.
Yeah.
So that's part of the enjoyment. Whereas a reader they might read something and go, oh, I didn't like the way the character did this, but they won't necessarily be able to solve it for you.
Yeah, and they're not with you in the moment. They're doing that somewhere else,
separately.
and then they're giving you a filtered version of their... If you were there, if you were able to spy on them reading and you saw them go...
Yeah, that's called stalking. That's
like drifting off.
It's not allowed, Gavin.
You just put a tiny camera on the top of the page.
Told you about that, mate. Amazon can get away with it with their Kindle.
Just some sensors.
That's not a problem.
Here and there around the body, so you can see any response they're having to the book or whatever.
Yeah, why not?
Fine.
Yeah,
it could work.
So the next episode that Gavin's recording is from prison. So
basically, I just wanted to do a little video about with my cousin Ken, and I'll probably do another little bit at the beginning because I forgot to introduce you properly. We'll do that properly again. I just wanted to do this little film just to sort of expand on the horizons of the concept of writing and how it intersects with board games and why writers should just have a go coming up with a board game idea.
One thing that we haven't talked about actually though is role-playing games. Of
course, they're the ones with the strongest link to
they
narrative.
are. It suddenly dawned on me halfway through when we were talking about actually role-playing games are one step away from you actually just writing a novel or writing a short story. Because I don't know, have you played role-playing games?
I have limited experience of it. Yes.
So it's basically certainly if you're the DM and you want to create your own story for them to your own campaign, you are writing, you're world building, and that is the strongest connection to writing. Is that you're world building. So you're trying to go, right, what's the religious system here? What's the monetary system? What's this? What's that? Is there a magic system? Is there normally in role playing games there is a magic system, but who are the characters? Who are the non-player characters? Who are the people they're meeting? Who are the baddies? What's the crisis? What's the objective? What's the goal? What's the motivation of everything?
How do you make the journey sort of satisfying for everyone?
Yeah. Is it too difficult? Is it too? And again, when you're writing, it's like I want to make the characters' journey difficult. It can't be too difficult that they all end up dead, unless you're writing a tragedy. Or you don't want to make it too easy because then there's no satisfaction, is there, in the resolution of it? So the role-playing aspect, I would say, is probably closer. It's definitely closer.
Yeah, and there's a reason why a lot of even like big-name Hollywood screenwriters, like the guys who do the Script Notes podcast, which I would highly recommend to anyone who's interested.
There you go.
Those guys, that's John August and what's the other guy called?
Peter April.
Peter April. Right, I'll Google it and then we'll add it in.
They're going to hate you for it. He's going to single you out, Gavin, and go, "You forgot my name." Call yourself a fan.
Who did Chernobyl? Do you remember? No.
What, the writer?
Yeah.
Oh, did it? Oh, is it him?
Yeah, I haven't got.
I don't know.
I'm used to there. Can't Google.
Yeah, he's got his phone. He's gone for his case.
Let's go back for another. I'm going to edit this by.
Oh yeah. Don't edit this. It's all fun.
The example I'd like to use.
Yeah. Can you remember their name, Gavin? Can you?
No, I've gone blank again.
John who?
There's no point in me remembering one till I've remembered the other one.
Don't worry about it. No one cares.
I'll start again.
Don't worry. Don't know.
Right.
I'm going to make it so you can't edit it.
Why do I bother? So basically, yes, the guys who do the Script Notes podcast.
Who are they, Gavin?
Their names are on the screen now.
They're in the screen now. John, who?
Yeah. Anyway, those guys are big role-playing game geeks.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying that.
No. Well, you probably ought to have checked that out. Otherwise, they will track you down, Gavin. And
Yes,
probably
so,
they'll bar you from the screenwriters. Just to let you know, I don't know if people know.
$multi-million.
I don't know if Gavin says this
to,
enough. But Gavin actually has had a feature film written. He wrote a feature film and got it produced and filmed and out there. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it was on
Amazon Prime and it's on iMovies as well.
So Gavin has got
Sparks
obvious professional experience. Yeah, Sparks and Embers of writing scripts, writing short stories. You've got a collection of short stories out at the moment, and you've got 2 or 3 books about running.
I have three running related books.
Yes.
Now, there's stuff on my channel about all of this, including quite recently a little rundown of how I made Sparks and Embers.
Yeah.
Which takes you through the whole process.
So he knows what he's talking about. Unlike me.
Yes. And Ken is going from strength to strength in games, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, things are happening. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, things are. I've kind of fallen into board game designing actually, but that strangely came about through knowing people. So my friend Kedrick, he has already published some board games and that, and I happened to meet him. I interviewed him for the Bottled Imp YouTube channel, and then this is an interesting thing actually. I do think and it's obvious to say, but maybe people don't necessarily think about this, when you collaborate, you have to be on the same wavelength. It's the same with writing, isn't it? And same with filmmaking. I would imagine, your crew has to be on the same wavelength as you, and your actors. So again, it's that blending of the creative minds, isn't it? Because if you're not quite, and also what I found is you can't be too precious about anything, because I might go, I've got this great idea, and then Kedrick goes, yeah, whatever, or vice versa, and you just have to go, yeah, actually, because you really have to think, is it for the good of the game? Is it always good for the game, or is it always good for writing? They say kill your baby sort of thing. If you write a great scene but it doesn't move the plot forward, or the character forward, it's like, is that just redundant? Is it just filler? So again, there is that same sort of
it can be a bit
connection.
painful when somebody comes up with a brilliant idea that you didn't have that will involve a vast amount of work to change it, but we'll end up with a better game or a better film, to be honest. And also I do think nothing's wasted. No.
Because you might have a mechanic that you initially think is going to work, and then it doesn't after you playtest it, but you got that mechanic and you think, well, I still like that mechanic. So if you then start developing another board game, you go, actually that mechanic would fit nicely there. You
get used to recycling. And that's another good habit for writers, is not to throw anything away.
Absolutely not.
Even if it's just a scrap of an idea. If it's any good, write it down. And it may pop up where you least expect it. And those podcasters were called Craig Mazin and John August.
You sure?
Of course I knew that.
Craig who?
Mazin.
Craig Amazing.
He did. I get this for a CV.
Go on.
The Hangover movies.
Oh God.
And Chernobyl.
Well, I was going to say, Chernobyl, very well respected. That was a brilliant. That was a series, wasn't it?
Yeah, very good.
The Hangover. Wow.
Oh, and Mythic Quest. Have you heard of Mythic Quest? You should have heard of Mythic Quest. I'm not sure what channel it's on in the UK.
I have heard of it.
It's like a comedy. I've not seen it. It's like a comedy thing about role play games.
Yeah.
Where it might come real. I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm not sure if I think I'm not. I don't know if I've seen a clip of it and thought it's a bit cringy. Or I'm thinking of something else.
Could be.
So, but yeah, Mythic Quest. See, it's a shame because, again, actually, we were talking about titles of games and how difficult it is to come up with titles of games simply because there's so many out there now. And that, again, relates to book titles as well. It's coming up with a title that sums up the feeling of the book or board game, sums up kind of what it's about, yet being original and yet being... just sounding good, because you can come up with a one-word thing, but it might just be, like curtain.
The game of curtain. Not even the game of curtains.
No,
game of one curtain.
One curtain. You're all trying to design
to draw the curtain.
A set of curtains, just one set of curtains.
God. Absolutely curtains. That's what I would call it.
Oh, look at that.
That. I'm good at names. great names.
Well,
sometimes.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
apart from remembering the names of famous filmmakers and podcasters.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah,
nobody remembers our names.
Yeah. So, yes. So that's it. That's really all I have to say.
Is that it?
That's pretty much it.
That's it.
And we will see you again, or in various shape and form.
Is this your stalking?
I don't know
again,
how to sign off.
It's your stalking. You've always look, Gavin. You've got to sort out your YouTube. You've got to come up with a little
you've got
tag.
To subscribe and shit. Yeah.
Well, there's that. Yeah, and shit. If you want to have a shit, go have a shit now. The video's ended. No, come up with a thing. I always say, "Magic be with you," or "May the stories of magic flow through you." Come up with something like that. So, like, you're a writer, so it'd be like, "And remember to sharpen your pencils."
I don't know if it's my style really. I'm just like, right, I'm off now. Bye.
I'm off to have a pot noodle and a shit.
Yeah. What I normally say is, if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe.
Don't do that.
Share it.
No.
Like it.
Don't.
Do all
How
those
dare
things.
you? Don't tell me what to do.
Things.
Don't do that. If you are subscribed, unsubscribe.
No. Anyway.
See you later.
I might have to edit some of that.